Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the Faith and Fandom Podcast on the Love Thy Nerd Network. I'm joined today by Aaron Dowen, who is a... Is it Dowen? Did I say that right? Dowen?
You nailed
Dowen?
it.
Nailed it. Okay, cool. Aaron Dowen, who is a author, publisher, Jesus-y person, um, like a whole production company of comics and all the things, and we'll get into some of that. But just want to say thanks for joining us here on the Love Thy Nerd Network, and you can find a lot of other good podcast content scattered throughout that. Each podcast also has its own unique YouTube channel if you prefer to watch these visually. So you can head over to YouTube at Faith and Fandom LTN if you want to watch more of these. You can also find us on the Glue Network, GLU, on Roku. So if you want to watch this on your TV and, eat Cheetos on the comfort of your couch, it is your right to do so on the GLU network on Roku. So, Aaron, thanks for joining me, dude. Thanks for being here.
No, appreciate it, man. Well, we've seen each other kind of recently, I guess, but it's been a while.
It was been a while even before that recently because we saw each other last Labor Day, or did you? Yeah,
I
Labor
was at
Day.
your
You're
whenever
at
your
my con,
con
but
was. Yeah.
that was like the week after that though, so it was like the
Yeah.
same week.
Yeah.
Um, a little bubble, and I'm kind of not mad, but low key mad that of how the calendar fell because the Brothers Boyd took my week. Um,
Oh,
because they would always do, or they did Labor Day weekend, and then there's usually a week between that and Power Comic Con in Florence,
yeah.
and this year there's not.
Oh, okay.
It's like September 6th and then PowerCon. I'm like, you took my weekend.
No.
So probably if I do one, it'll be the 21st of September now. But yeah, I hadn't seen you in a minute, but like we met when did Catalyst start?
I think uh I think technically 2017, but publishing maybe 2018.
Okay. So I probably met you at the 2018 Heroes Con then, maybe.
Something like that. I don't know.
It could have been 2017. It's either way, it's a small lifetime ago
Yeah.
since that process. And you don't just make you make Catalyst comics, and we'll go into that, but you also write some books that are spiritually themed and for different places in life, from worship to marriages to different stuff like that. So but like, where are you from? Like, what's your NPC backstory? Like,
Oh man, NPC backstory would be I guess originally I was born in Florida, but born into a pastor's family, and we kind of bounced around a little bit, but spent a lot of time in North Carolina. And that's pretty much where I was raised. We bounced back to Florida one time when I was little and then back to North Carolina. But that's pretty much where I lived most of my life. And now I split it pretty evenly between North Carolina and Pennsylvania.
okay, all right. Um, and when I first met you, you were starting your comic book company, Catalyst Comics.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember the first dude was Tilt.
First, like marketable one. The first thing was Paradigm, but Tilt's kind of what people identify as the earliest thing.
Okay. So tell us about Catalyst. Tell us about what it was like to actually start your own comic, start your own comic book chain company thing. Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, so it came about where I was writing comic book scripts just for fun. I've always been writing since I was a little kid, a lot of short stories and stuff. And then I got older and I just wanted to do a different format, just write something different. My first love is always prose and long format, but I decided to
I've
write.
never heard that said out loud.
Well, I'll say it. Honestly, it's a thing I embrace a whole lot more now. And I try to encourage other comic book writers to try writing prose as well.
I'm not
Uh,
going to derail you too badly, but did you ever read Batman 666?
yes.
Or is it no, it's 626. 666 is Damien's, but there's one that uh not Chris Claremont. The guy who also did the X-Men with the leather suits. Um
I'm not going to know names.
Good grief. I'm gonna remember this at some point. But there was he was the X-Men, he was the Batman writer after Jeff Loeb
Hmm.
and then before Tom King. Um Either way, um, he's responsible for Damian Wayne.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
Either way, he wrote an issue that the entire issue, front to back, is nothing but prose.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
And it's like this deep cut Joker story, but it's entirely in prose, and and people were
Of course.
so mad about it. So, why do you like prose?
Um, I mean, I guess I'll get in a little bit of trouble. I think it takes more effort and more talent.
Fair enough.
I mean, yeah, not to be mean or anything, but like a thing that I've talked about, it's come up within the last year or so because I went on a whole lot of shows promoting a comic that was coming out, and then I've done stuff promoting other stuff, and I get tired of hearing people who write comic books say I write comics because I can't write. And so that I find that as a writer, I find it an offensive and strange way to market. But um, yeah, so I don't know. That's just my honest feelings on it.
Okay. So you got into writing because of that, and then how'd that migrate to comics for you?
Yeah, so that was just an expansion, just trying something different. And I'd never really done scripting before. So started scripting, met various people through that process. Geez, like one of the original things I scripted is about to come out from a different company. And
Huh.
I don't like to talk too much about it, but um
Okay.
sh- just things you do when you're beginning and you think it's a good thing and everybody's like, "Oh, we'll give you exposure," and so you do things and then, they don't pan out I don't know, the best way. But anyway, so we started actually publishing with Paradigm, and we did a Kickstarter, never having done anything like that. Um, just thinking everybody would jump into it and we'd be good to go. And it was a struggle bus for a full month. By the grace of God, we funded it and got to kind of start the company. And that's where Tilt came out, was after that. And so through that course, we've released the full Tilt first story. Um, and Paradigm's been out. Welcome to Everville. It's like a dark fantasy horror. One Last Job is a spy thriller, and we've done 2 issues of that. There's one left to go. And then last year we released Fall of Night, which is about a Knight Templar who ends up in feudal Japan, and it's really a crisis of faith story, and I get to get pretty wacky violent with it as well. But I wanted to really kind of keep it grounded and make it feel real, as if it were something that could have actually happened because those things did occur at the same time.
Okay, fair.
Yep.
Whew, my coaster
Oh
stuck in
no.
my cup. Sorry. Um, so beyond just making your own comics, you've run a publishing company. Do other people write for you?
Not that nothing, not that we've released, no.
Okay.
There are some things kind of going on now. I guess they're not even really comic book related at this point. It's just other writers who are writing stories that we kind of talk about different stuff.
Okay. Because like I know some people when they, get this handle of a publishing, they're branching out to other people and things. But like, you know, I my I've written as it stands, 3 comic books.
Hmm.
One I wrote for an artist, um, that shall not be named, and I wrote for an artist. They sent it back, gave me some rewrite stuff. I wrote it back, and honestly, I felt like, dude, it was some of the best like fictional writing I've done.
Hmm.
And then it just got shelved. Um, and it got shelved because the artist said that his spouse didn't like uh, the idea for the comic book,
Uh,
and it just got shelved. And I'm like, oh, okie dokie. Never, never. I was like, cool, good talk. I was like, you want to pay me for that comic book I wrote for you or anything? Just like,
well,
uh,
so that nods to what I mentioned earlier is like the thing that I did for somebody else. It's finally getting ready to come out, but Aaron has never seen anything from that. So
and that's discouraging. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
There's actually a whole other one that's already out for the same people. And the only thing I ever say about it is that It got changed in post production, and like somebody changed my dialogue and stuff. And I have the only physical copy of the. I made my own version of it. I relettered it, and it's called the unredacted version. And so I hold on to that.
Well, that's the one thing too, though. The first thing I wrote for somebody else that got published, I wrote it, got the art done because like the comic book creator said, "Hey, here's X amount of dollars.
Hmm.
Write it, illustrate it, get it turned in." Gave us a deadline. Did it.
Right.
Really happy with what I did. He sent me the digital copy of it, and it was like I only did 4 pages. Like that's all I wrote. It was like a 4 page story, like or like front and back 4 page story. Um, and so he completely rearranged all the pages
Hmm.
and put the dialogue in different places. And I'm like, hey man, I'm not. Did you get the outline? Because this isn't what he's like. Oh no, this the your last page was really awesome, so I wanted that to be the first page. I'm like,
That's not how this works.
and I was like, no, it's supposed to be this whole. And it's just like, but whatever. But that's the hard thing when you work with others, and
Yes,
which is probably one of the reasons why you work with yourself.
exactly. Yeah. And then I'm the one doing the, getting the artists together and the team together. Um, and then it's just hopeful project management from that point on.
And like the one comic I'd published myself this past year was a studio said, give us something and give us something churchy but not too churchy.
Hmm.
And so I wrote the comic that was the first thing that came to my mind on that topic, but they wanted something a little more your speed
Hmm.
of like spiritual battles, like some cool malevolent forces and stuff like that. And I gave them an awkward youth group story.
Okay.
So not the same ideas. Like,
Nah,
it's like you tell me churchy, but not too churchy. And I think, slice of life, and you wanted an episode of Supernatural. I'm like, oh,
got you. Yeah.
gotcha. I was like, yeah, I should have clarified that. But I'm really
Yep.
happy with the book we put out. So it's whatever.
Hey, yeah,
So
that's what matters.
what has been like the biggest thing you've taken away from your comic book production time?
Oh, goodness. It's insanely difficult now to build an audience around any particular comic book. That's probably the biggest thing. It felt like it had gotten a little bit easier for a while, a few years ago, and then 2020 happened. Everybody decided that they wanted to jump into the comic book creation realm, and so a lot of people came in, made one book, realized you don't just make print money off of books, and then a lot of them just disappeared and never made second issues, or maybe a couple, tried to force through a second issue. But in the long run, I think that kind of damaged people's trust. Um, and so now it's more about it's hard to find good stories. It's hard to find good stories from the big publishers. I mean, but when you go to indie, there's just so much that you kind of have to sift through it. So I do think that the biggest thing is finding the right audience or making sure that you're getting in front of the people that would actually enjoy your content.
And that's the thing is, with the book I made too, is I made it almost just as the sales pitch for them to pick it up. And
Hmm.
when, the initial company I reached out to didn't want it, I was like, oh, I guess that's over. And like
Hmm.
was my first thought. And then literally the next show I was at, they're like, when's issue 2? And I'm like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
you want more of it? Oh, well, guess might need to do something.
Well, we did Fall of Night, and we pitched it to a bunch of different companies. I had been really against pitching, but um, in general, for this particular book, I just thought it would be one that would be really worth pitching. Um, and most just don't respond. And the one that did respond sent like a one word or a one sentence response, and it was super unprofessional, like the verbiage that they used or whatever. And I'm not going to call them out, but that they're struggling too, so whatever. Um, but from that point, it was just like, oh, well, I mean, either way, we're going to put this book out. And so we did, and it's been our most successful one to date. And it's just ironic that it's also the one that nobody wanted to help with.
I've got one more book that's like in the ether, comic book wise, that the same like the same company that didn't want my Jesus book,
Hmm.
um, have a completely just fun nerd centric idea that emerged from sitting in an artist alley that was empty and nobody was around, and me and some of the artists just started
Like most
like,
artists, Sally's.
especially during the cosplay contest, which is what the
Oh.
story sent. Okay, don't you know, don't steal my idea, podcast listeners. I'm not worried about you. Um, so like the essential thing was I was at a show and it was a quiet show to begin with, and then like the cosplay contest started and literally it became crickets. Like you couldn't see anybody at all.
Hmm.
And I started joking with one of the artists that was like right next to me. It was like, you know, if there was a bank next to a con, cosplay contest would be a good time to rob the bank. And so now the story's going to be a group of artist alley people like notice that there's a show next to a really small little old timey bank with poor security, and they plan from one year to the next to like rob the bank during the Comic Con, the
Yeah.
cosplay contest, and like how that's all going to unfurl like a heist job style book, make it like a crisp 5 issues and
Yeah.
bounce. We'll see how that goes. Um, so, but I just haven't had the mental bandwidth to actually do it. But
I get that.
so do you see comics being something you're sticking with for like long run? Do you feel like your time's running out? Like where are you at?
Oh goodness.
Because you're
Eh,
coming up on a decade.
I guess at some point, yeah, it's coming up, isn't it?
It's like less than 2 years now.
Yeah. I still feel like a baby in it though. Um, so it's kind of a hard thing to answer because, like I said earlier, prose is my first love, and I've been putting a lot more time into that. I'm trying to hopefully this year release my first collection of short stories, some of which are integrated into part of the comic book world, and then other ones that are just fun things that I've written. I also try to keep up with a pretty nice, healthy Substack as far as content wise, and that's all flash fictions or some mental health stuff, spiritual stuff, like all that is kind of where I put that focus. So the reason it's a hard thing to answer is because there's certain stories that I want to make sure that are finished, that are in comic book form right now. One of which would be Welcome to Everville. There's a whole story that's already been plot and planned, and it's just a matter of getting those together. And then One Last Job, there's only one issue left to complete that story. And then Fall of Night, I would probably, instead of putting it out as a series, would like to just flip it into a graphic novel. I do think that the future for my own writing and is going to be mostly prose and graphic novels, and probably moving away from the idea of single issues.
Yeah. Well, single issues are a lot harder to move, especially because when you could
Hmm.
say, hey, here's a whole collective work, then,
Yep,
it becomes a whole thing with that beyond there.
absolutely.
So beyond just your comic stuff, by the way, have you been doing a lot of cons lately? Or because,
No, no. We went real hard in 2019, 2020, and then last year I did a bunch, but I don't know that I'm going to really get back into the circuit. I'll probably try to do other things possibly.
it felt like there was a hole there where like I
Oh
didn't
yeah,
see
yeah,
you.
for sure. Yeah, I just they're not beneficial as a publisher. And that's one of the biggest reasons we stepped back from it is it's getting taxing to have to pay to go set up and to drag yourself there. And then for the most part, as you know, in certain areas, it's more about cosplay than it is about anyone who actually wants to buy anything. Or they're there for other particular items, not really comic books, especially from self-published or indie publishers.
I meant like realistically speaking, and out of the let's say 20 shows I still do a year, um, I can confidently say three of them might make a profit,
Yeah, right.
and the rest of them are like by the grace of God and Patreon.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
that
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 that's
it's functional.
that's where I ended up with it is it's just like not worth the time and the effort. I could be spending that time either just hanging out with the family or working on something.
Yeah. I still love it. But I like, and I've got my own little missional thing with it, but beyond that, like I get
Yep.
that if I was just trying to create, and it's a hard place to sell
Yep.
your art and to sell your stories, man.
Yeah.
So beyond that, you've also thrown a lot into the like ministry world in terms of your creation. I think your book was a worship shaped whole. Was that
Yep.
the right
Yep.
title?
That
I
was the
remember
first
that.
one.
That was your first ministry centric book, and
Mhm.
what put you on that? I remember that coming out, and I
Yeah.
was like, because I think that came out about the same. Maybe my timing's off, but I feel like there was a Francis Chan about the whole book about the Holy Spirit, and that one I just kind of like lumped them into the same.
Oh, yeah, you're probably right. I mean, you wrote the intro for it, or
I know,
the,
yeah, but
I
that's
guess,
like
what is it?
again
Not an intro, but whatever it's called.
forward or whatever. But
Forward, yeah.
it's been
Yeah.
a lifetime, man.
I know, right? Yeah, so that was really it was a collection of things that I wrote for my master's certification in worship studies from Liberty. I took a whole bunch of those different papers that we had to write throughout those courses and kind of tried to put them together into, I guess really it's a my philosophy of worship for the most part. And growing up in church, going to all different kinds of churches, especially when you're a pastor's kid, you just get dragged here, there, and everywhere. And seeing the either lack of worship or the production of worship, I felt like it was pretty pertinent to put out for me to get something out there that I was passionate about. And as someone who, I was a worship leader from the time I was like 16 years old to up until, I don't know, 3 years ago, something like that. And so it was all stuff that I was just observing and thinking about and praying about, and it just seemed right to put that out.
What was your response for that?
Um, Mostly positive. I mean, no one ever really bucked against it, which I appreciate. Um, if they wanted to, I suppose they just never said anything.
Did you have like a market for that as well, like that, or like,
It was kind of similar to like, just, I mean, when you're self-publishing, it's just like, I hope somebody sees this. And at the time, when, especially if you're in church, then it's like you'll probably get the people from your church to buy it and your family, or like that one did find different hands to at least check it out. And it's another one that I would love to actually circle back to and try to get to a broader audience, because it's self-published, so there's it could be more could be done with it.
you could always make an audio version of it, and
Yeah, yeah, which is something I love doing too. A lot of my posts on Substack, when I write flash fictions, I like to do an audio, a voiceover version of it.
um that's just you mentioned that. It's like I've really really tried hard to avoid ever even mentioning my books at church,
Yeah.
just because like I don't want to be the pastor that's like the pastor's got a new book, you need to support your
Yep.
church. Like I've never wanted to be
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I never
Plus
really had that problem.
never had that. Yeah, and plus that, and you know I got a the majority of church is muggles, so it's just like
Mhm.
you know for my stuff it's not that. Or if it is straight biblical content, I've like taken sermon series I've written and turned them into books,
Right.
and it's like, why would
Well,
I try and sell y'all the sermon series you just
yeah, but
listened to?
that is the thing. Even with that particular book, was like, the audience is, it's there's a niche, and then there's a niche of the niche, and this is for not only for Christians, but it has to be for people that are even interested in the Bible, and not only interested in the Bible, but people that are interested in a biblical outlook of what worship was. Like, I don't know that I could get much more niche than that.
Mm-mm. And so what else have you like? And you mentioned your Substack. How is that going for you?
So I took a break. Actually, I was working on it earlier. I guess it'd be my first one for this year. I had been going real hard for the whole last part of last year up until about November, and kind of stepped back from it to take a breather. But I love it. I mean, it's super fun. It gets much better views than other things that I had done. Even as far as the podcast side of it, we had Beards and Comics podcast for a few years, and I can do an update podcast over on Substack, and it'll get more listens and views than what we were doing on Spotify and all that for Beards and Comics. And I don't know if it's just, I think it's more so you're finding the people that actually care about your creative side or your actual writing, is what ended up happening. But like I said, I do flash fiction over there and some mental health stuff, some general update stuff. Um, and so there's a little bit of something for everybody, and I've really enjoyed doing that. And I think I want to start using it more for some updates as well, so I can keep people on top of like the things that I'm working on or things that'll be coming out later on. Because I've never really been using it like that, and I should probably at least try a little bit.
I'd never heard of it until Tom King put out a comic
Hmm.
that was Love Everlasting that was released on Substack
Yeah.
first, and I think one of the Ninja Turtle people did it too. Um,
There's a bunch of them. I mean, you got Tinian's over there, and he's pretty consistent. Scotty Young's
Snyder.
over. Yeah, yep, yep. All of them are over there. And I don't know, it's been popping off more and more. And a lot more people are working on content for it too. So I think it's a great platform, and it's still growing.
And that's one of the things that, like, I knew it as a, to me, I'd only known it as a comic book platform.
Mhm.
But then I was talking to one of my friends that said that's where they get all their news from.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's stuff there for everybody. It's actually a thing that I wanted to use for one of the other endeavors. Um, is Thoth, and it's for students aged 18 to 22 that want to like learn about living in a creative life. And so we have different courses. One of them was journalism, and so with that, I wanted to get the students writing. And what's really cool about Substack is they can all have their own Substack, and you can collab piece everything. So I was going to start a site called the Comics Rag, and it's just all different, news that is small press, indie related, and it'd be written by them, but they would have their own portfolio with their own link directly to their stuff. It just also feeds over into the comic rag. But it's like I said, it's a really cool platform, and the collaboration stuff that's over there now is, I think, hopefully going to be something that we'll see more and more of. That'll help get eyes on other people's stuff.
So one of the things projects you announced recently, and maybe you didn't announce, maybe that's just the first time I saw it, but
Hmm.
you I saw it mentioned recently is that you did a new devotional
Hmm.
that is for, was it men specifically?
Yeah, it is for fathers who are struggling through divorce and custody battles.
So give me the story, like where, how, like where'd that come from? How does it go in? Like
Came from
let's
life. I prefaced a lot of this stuff with saying how I grew up and stuff, and the unfortunate realities. I ended up going through the same thing, and there's just not adequate resources for men who are going through that, and so in that process, I started writing. It ended up being just 30 days, and the idea behind it originally was 30 days of gratitude while you're going through this stuff. And what it ended up being was kind of just a real assessment phase of, if you're feeling worried or angry or lonely, all that kind of stuff. And so each day kind of has its own little mood focus. And then it has a devotional with scripture and a prayer guidance. And then it also has an activity, mindfulness or whatever it needs to be for that particular topic. But going through it, like I said, just could not find the right resources to actually help, especially as someone who, has been active in ministry for so long. When I realized that was needed, I just decided that that's something I should do. And one of my friends had been going through the same thing at the same time. And so I just started sending every day to him and getting his notes back on it and being like, this one was super encouraging because of this, this, and this. And that was kind of the way that it progressed. And then, I put that out. I mean, it's on Amazon, but it's another one that I'm still trying to see what other avenues I can get so that it ends up in the right people's hands.
So like you, I think realistically speaking, seeing your book advertised or like you promote that, I think that might be the first ministry book I've seen for men and divorces.
I think so.
I mean, I worked in a bookstore. I, I frequented more Christian bookstores than I can count.
Yeah.
I'm in the publishing world. I'm in that, and I don't know if I've ever seen it.
Yeah.
And because I think there's such a huge stigma, especially there's a huge stigma for men going through divorces in general.
Yes.
But then when you add men who have been part of ministry going through divorces, like we were talking about the niche or the niche within the
Yeah.
niche. Listen, dude, men in ministry going through divorces, it's just like your option is go die.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I mean,
Um,
exactly.
and because being like, you know, life's had its ups and downs,
Hmm.
and relationally, like maritally, all those things, it's had its ups and downs. And one of the thoughts has always crossed my mind is like, first of all, I have abandonment issues to begin with, like, so that's deep
Right.
rooted
Right.
in
Yeah.
everything within me.
Yeah.
Um, but like the idea is that, if this goes down, you lose everything. Your
Yep.
kids aren't gonna love you. You're never gonna be able to serve Jesus again. It's just
Yeah.
like all those fears and stuff are just like sitting right there. Um, so this was like you feeling the need for what you needed that you couldn't find.
Yeah. Yeah. For myself, honestly, it was first like, let me put my thoughts down on this stuff. And um, I never wanted it to be, and it's not a talking about the other person. It's not a, um, trying to turn yourself into the hero or anything. And it's more of an admission of brokenness and admission of all these different feelings that you go through during that time. And, um, what the scripture says about them and, what you might can do about it, or where maybe you can adjust your mindset or things you can pray for as well.
Um, and I think it's one of the biggest needs, honestly. Like when you saw that, I was like, oh man, I need to get him on the podcast. Like the minute I saw that out there, I was like, um, not on this specific podcast because it was before I partnered up with LTN for it, but um, I did a podcast with a young lady who used to be in my college ministry, um, who is a divorce counselor.
Hmm.
Like her whole deal is helping you get your life back up after divorce because she got famous, air quotes famous, um, on TikTok and like Newsweek and stuff like that
Yeah.
because she had been divorced twice before 30
Mm.
and was now a divorce coach for other people.
Right. Okay.
And and like TikTok and like the Daily Mail and like all these other news outlets had a field day with like,
Of course. Yeah.
why is someone who's been through this giving anybody advice? And so
Right.
she turned that into her platform. And it's just like one of those things. I did a podcast with her about that, and I got I got hate, man.
Yeah.
Like I got like, why are you promoting this? Like I was
Mm.
like, listen, this isn't about promotion of anything. This is about people are going through this and good
Yep.
resources. And then, yeah, I wasn't certain how valid it was until I was at a con. I was at Heroes Con, and one of my like longtime people connected with Faith and Fandom, um, came up to say that they had just gone through that year
Hmm.
and that podcast was a big help for them. I was like, oh, I guess it was worth
Yeah.
it.
Absolutely.
And because like, you know, everybody goes through different stuff, but I mean, I just remember like, especially growing up in like deep South Southern Baptist churches, it was like, um, you know, literally you go live in a shed now. It's not,
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
there was no grace or anything like that. And, you could serve, but you had to serve way back there or, um,
I mean, um, some of the denominations that I grew up with, like you wouldn't be able to serve in any ministry capacity, if you had been through divorce. And like I wasn't part of them at the time, so that's fine. But it's just something that I've thought about a lot, when going through that is like, man, it's something that is talked about, a lot when we're growing up because they want you to avoid it at all costs, and which is, a great goal. But the reality is once you go through it, then all those old feelings and old things that you've heard people say about stuff, they come back.
there was the church I pastored the longest ever. Um, One of the dudes that was the most faithful, most genuine, kindest dudes I've ever seen in my life, loved Jesus more than anything. Um, was like constantly being voted on to be a deacon and then rejected because he had been divorced. And the thing was is like, they said, well, he got married and divorced before he became a Christian. And
Hmm.
like, like shouldn't that even be a fact? But it's just like people were just so hard to it, and
Yep.
I think there's a gaping void for empathy for people who go through things that you haven't gone through yet. And
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, especially when you are in ministry, like because those are all stigmas that, we're told, especially when you're with other guys, when you're hanging out with the other guys and um talking about life and who you're going to end up with and all that kind of stuff. Like that's all stuff that gets talked about, and that for the most part, most of them at the time when we were younger would have had that same kind of outlook on it. And then the older you get, you go through things that you didn't expect to.
yeah, life rarely turns out how you exactly plan it. And then, but like if, but it's amazing to me that the the level of we apply grace to everywhere but here,
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
that area has,
Yep.
because here's the thing: I've seen so many ministries and ministry material for women in divorce,
Hmm.
but like literally your book is the first one I've seen geared towards men. So first of all, I'm grateful for that, because there's
Me too.
a lot, a lot of dudes out there that probably could really benefit from it.
I think so.
um and I think there's, the whether it be the stigma or the black flag or scarlet letter or whatever you want to lay to it, that of, you know, why doesn't grace extend this far?
Hmm.
What would you say, like, out of the stuff that's in your book, what would you say are like some three things that you think would be beneficial just off the cuff that, would, out of there?
Um, I would probably say one of the things that I was encouraged to do after I put it all together was to put a quick reference. And the quick reference is broken down by feeling. So if you're having a particularly like I wanted people to get multiple use out of the book, so you can go through it for 30 days. That is the initial goal, is go through it for 30 days. Get those things that you need to focus on and in the gratitude in that. But I want people to be able to go back to it, and the way that that happened was organizing it by, quick page of if you're feeling particularly worried, then there's all right, well, day 7, day 12, or whichever ones they are, it'll say which ones are dealing specifically with that feeling, so you can flip back to it. It was important for me because, again, going through it myself, there's those moments where it's like, oh, this is the particular I am feeling. And then having the quick guide, I think was hugely beneficial. I think also the other thing is I tried to be honoring in the way that I used scripture. And while there's a couple of things in there that are playful, for the most part, it's very raw and very honest. And I wanted people to be able to read it and connect with the real feeling, even if maybe one of the things is like one of the chapters is called Dad Bod, and it's just dealing with after the fact, dealing with your self-esteem and self-confidence, things like that. But yeah, those are the big things. I think is having a quick reference is huge, and then the activities on the every single day has its own little set of things to focus on.
Um, do you cover things? Because I haven't read it yet, obviously, because I just found out like last week.
Yeah.
Um, uh, do you cover stuff on like how you deal with your kids and like,
Yes. So that is one of the biggest things. Because the full name, the ridiculously long full name is Restless 30 Days of Devotions for Fathers Who Are Struggling Through Divorce and Custody Battles. So there are times in there where you're talking about anger, or you're talking about worry, and all of it is like the goal is to be reflective of um, the realization that your kids are seeing you go through this stuff as well. And so it does have to do with what things are okay to talk about, what things aren't okay. And so the parenting side of it is very much in there as well.
have you gotten pushback? Have you gotten any like negativity or anything?
No, it's only been like, oh man, like why isn't this out there more? Well, because I'm not good at marketing.
Yeah, I hear that. Um, so what do you have like a goal for where it's going to head or anything you want to see else further take place with it?
Yeah, I mean, again, the real thing is just how do I market it and get it into the right people's hands? And there's all kinds of different avenues to take with that. I did just recently, a few weeks back, start pushing it through, trying to get it to literary agents. Um, but that's difficult task if anyone knows anything about querying your scripts, manuscripts, and stuff. It's just you have to find the right literary agent. You have to find one that's going to accept religious text at all, and then you're going to have to find one that's willing to accept devotion. So it's a whole task. It'll be a blessing if God opens that door. I've also reached out to a bunch of men's ministry directors for denominations, and I can tell you they don't respond. I have only maybe heard back from one denomination, and it was just like a nonsensical response. Nothing about like actually like, hey, let's talk about this. It was more like, hey, that's a really cool thing that you put out, but it didn't, progress anywhere. So it showed me another need, I guess, which is communication efforts. But yeah, so I want to be able to do more with it. It's just still a matter of how do we get that marketing together enough that it makes sense to find the right people.
Mm.
That's pretty much what I've been working on with it.
That's such a broad like spectrum of like creative content. So
Hmm.
from prose to comic books to like devotionals for
Yeah.
dads going through divorces and custody battles.
Yep.
That's a girthy stance.
Yep. I try to be honest with everything I work on. It's like this is what I'm thinking about at the time.
Um, like, and this if this is a too deep of a question or too personal, um, like going through this, did any part of like this process make you feel like less worthy for ministry or like isolated or anything like that?
Yeah, all of it. All of it. Like there's stuff that very few people will ever know of what occurred, um, because I'm not out there to paint any kind of picture. But
And
yeah, all of
I'm
it.
not asking for you to like,
No, yeah, for sure. No, it's just, from day one, it's just like, oh, well, this is about to be an interesting time frame. To the moment, like you have to call your parents, and then that's a whole other thing. And then dealing with the difficulties of like if somebody either does or does not want to be cooperative, and like mine was, it was messy, and I mean to this point, it's a difficult situation. But it's just yeah, the whole time that's what you're thinking about is just like, man, I don't know if I'm doing anything right, and I hope it can work out, and then it's mostly just being hopeful.
Well, I haven't read it, obviously, but I do plan to, and I'm thanking you in advance for taking the time to put your heart into this. And, I've appreciated the stuff you've created, um, and while I do think we need better worship focus and
Yeah.
we need good indie comics. Like I feel like that this is a I think kind of a vital thing to put out there.
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll be a blessing the more it gets out there. And, doing it, I think, is another thing that has been a blessing for me. And God He did open doors. And I'm with someone now who's very supportive and encouraged me through the process of writing that as well, which is something that I very much needed. Like back to the question you had just asked about feeling unworthy in ministry and stuff like that. Writing it is like, all right, well, and even now, like so many things happen at the same time. The church that I was an associate at and worship leader at shut down, and so that was the first time in my since 16 that I wasn't active in ministry, and so it actually happened at the same time frame as all of this, and so the realization, and I'm realizing it more and more now, is like my ministry is shifting. Um, it's going to look different. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I know that he's using me in these ways to write things that people need, and I'm grateful to be used. And so I think that's where the flip comes in, though, is when there's the time frame where you feel like you're not worthy to do it, but then when you realize he's still speaking to you about stuff, then you're like, well, if you're going to use it, then use it.
I just remember when I was, man, like 40 billion years ago of like early on, like maybe 2003, there was a young couple that I was doing ministry with. Like we were counselors at the same like summer camps, like
Hmm.
same age, high school sweethearts, got married, um, and then his wife left him within the first 6 months of
Oof.
marriage,
Yeah.
and like, but he was heading into the pastorate, and like he just gave up on ministry at that point,
Hmm.
like just out the gate of like, well, I've been divorced, I'm God can't use me anymore. And that was like
Yeah.
literally his 18-year-old self, 19-year-old self, however we were young, um was just that think of like, and I think about that, and I think that was one of those things that terrified me. I was just
Yeah.
like, it's like, did you just lie down and die right now? Like what just happened? And um just letting people know that God's not done with them.
Yeah.
uh
I mean, but you do have those days, and sometimes sometimes rest is a good thing too, and refocusing. And um like we talk about it all the time in the house. Is just, I don't know what would have happened if I don't have the faith that I have. Because I know a lot of people, you'll talk to them and they'll say, there's times that I've doubted God and all that. And I'm proud that I've never had that. I've never, through all the chaos of all the different things that I've faced throughout this situation or just life in general, feelings of depression, sadness, or whatever, I've never doubted him. I've asked him a lot of questions. Um,
excuse
I've
me,
I've
excuse me.
fussed at him. I've fussed at him, and even to this day, sometimes there's a day where you just throw your hands up and you're like, God, yep, if you're gonna do something, probably now's a good time.
Um, do you see these worlds colliding of you ever taking some of the stuff that you're working on now into comic book form for
That's
that?
kind of what Fall Night is. When I talked to all the different podcasts I was on at the time, um, it's pitched in a way of like, it's an action adventure with a lot of heart. It's again about a Knight Templar in feudal Japan. He went AWOL after they went too far in the Crusades, and I maybe had mentioned that it's a crisis of faith story, but really, it is at its core, it is going to be a story of exploring the ideas of redemption and how do you recapture these things? How do you separate the good stuff from the bad stuff? And that's kind of what the goal is with the main character in that story. And so hopefully I'll be able to do that whole graphic novel, and that'll be the first thing. There are things that I very, very much want to create that are on my bucket list items. I would love to create a realistic, gritty, honest version of King David in comic book format. And also, The Death of the Apostles is another one that I'd like to do. So, yeah, the worlds are going to keep colliding just because it is who I am. And here lately, I've been a little bit more thinking about that of how far do I want to take my faith into these other projects where, because there's things that I've written like Welcome to Everville, which is really it's an alien invasion story, and like faith is, if I were to put it in there, it's going to be out of place and a little chaotic. But with the stuff that I'm developing from here on and things that I'm doing on Substack, like there's such a huge place for it there that it'll probably just keep bleeding in because it's at the forefront of my mind.
Sweet. So if there's anything else you would want people that are interested in checking out your work or that are kind of identify with your story, is there anything you'd want them to know before we're out?
Yeah, I mean, the best place to get to know how broken my brain is would be aarondowen.substack.com. And you can just click through all the different flash fictions, and there's, all kinds of different stuff on there.
Oh, sweet. And we'll have that link and all the other links towards your stuff posted in the podcast notes. And Aaron, thanks for taking the time to like share and be a part of this. I really appreciate it, man.
No, I appreciate it as well.
So yeah, make sure you check out Aaron's links. Look up his books on art. Do you have like? Is there another Jesus-y book in between the worship one and the restless one?
Nope, there's only two right now.
Okay, those are the only two. That's what I thought. Okay. Where can they get your comics?
Yeah, so comics wise, the easiest way to do it is digital, which would be over on Global Comics. Just look up Catalyst Comics, or you can go to the website, catalystcomicstudio.com, and click through all that stuff.
Uh, just on a publishing level, who did you print your books with?
Um, as of the last, I don't even remember how many books we used Comic Impressions out of Florida.
Okay, I used Comics Wellspring, and I didn't like hate it or anything, but I wasn't sure if you had like preferences or.
Oh yeah, I could do a whole podcast on why I don't like them.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So what was
Shots
that?
fired.
What was I was like, you've been real chill the whole time. It's just like, by the way, boom.
Well, publishing's a whole other topic, and there's the ins and outs of that people probably do like to know, but also don't. But yeah, Comic Impressions is who we use.
Comic Impressions. Okay. Um, just because moving forward, I'm always looking for wizened people that know what they're doing. Um, Oh, cool. Well, you'll be able to check out links to Aaron's stuff and to be able to find more content there. And I want to thank you all for joining us here on the Faith and Fandom podcast. And remember, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on the Glue Network on Roku. And there's lots of other podcasts on the Love Thy Nerd Network, from wrestling to like board gaming to the streaming. There's a lot of stuff going on there. So make sure you check out all the cool options that are there. And thank you for taking the time to hang out with us.